What's going on, fam? Happy Friday. It's your girl, your home girl. I said your girl. I'm your home girl too. And I'm also your cousin, Tanisha Peoples, live with my homeboy and partner in good trouble, Mr. Jason B. Allen. And we are two-thirds of the trio that talks that real shit. Neo is out today. He's in DC getting into good trouble for black men that have been murdered and brutalized by police. So y'all send some, love and peace his way as he, fights a good fight. But today
Yeah.
he's with us, so welcome to the convo, y'all.
Y'all know we gonna bring it on today. I'm excited. Now Tanisha is actually a DJ. I am only DJ Allen when I am doing my virtual classes and I try to put on some, good tunes for my students. But it's a blessing and honor to be back because the death rates of COVID-19 are really increasing and it's hitting home in a lot of fronts. Just this morning, apparently Ajan here in the city of Atlanta passed away from pneumonia and COVID-19. And, the lack of resources to protect our educators and students who are in public schools is something that is really serious. On Atlanta at 9 a.m. this morning, a parent was talking about how two parents just recently passed away, one leaving behind a husband and four kids, another leaving behind a husband and two kids, one a newborn. And Black women are being impacted heavily by the pandemic. So I don't take being on here and being able to share my perspective around what we can do to empower Black minds lightly, because so many people are leaving here so quickly. It is unbelievable.
I mean, this whole thing, this pandemic, it's really just a clusterfuck, to be honest. When you think about, I'm looking at specifically here in Chicago, and you got parents that are advocating for remote learning, and you got parents that want their kids back in school. And, it just makes sense for so many reasons, particularly because parents got to go and support their, families at work. They need the kids back in school because we have this learning loss. And, whether people think that's a myth or not, it's just so much going on. But at
Yes.
this point, it's like, are we ever getting out of this? They talking about these booster shots and this, I'm vaccinated. But at the same time, it's like, how many shots are we going to have to get to protect us from this? Will we ever be protected from this? Will this be similar to the flu? So I don't know. At this point, I'm feeling a little hopeless, particularly for my community, because we don't know if and how we're going to get out of this.
Well, you
It's really a shame.
Sis, and I know we got to go to the T, but I do want to dwell on this just for a second because a lot of people aren't having this conversation.
Hmm.
And it's really important. I was not a champion for the vaccine in the beginning.
Either.
I wasn't. And let me tell you why. Because I teach my students the history of science experiments that have happened on not just people of color, black men and women in particular, but I'm a special education teacher and I know conversations that we don't even have around how people who have physical disabilities, mental disabilities, have and are being experimented on in regards to
Hmm.
what type of drugs and treatments can we provide to what some in the medical field would say to tame them, as if we are taming a wild animal. And so it is really important to have conversations around this vaccine and what this looks like. And I'm going to be very honest, liberating Black minds. I think we need to be very smart and use common sense best practices that President Obama mentioned that we should all be mindful of doing. But I can't help but wonder, is this something that was man-made, created to stop our ability to assemble?
Uh-oh, now
Because
you sounding like Nicki. They go call you
what
Nicki Minaj out here.
what has happened across our world where we at one point saw people being able to gather? Look at what happened in Afghanistan. Those women, those citizens who said, listen, we want something different, they were able to gather together and build safe spaces. But the pandemic took that away. It took
Mm.
that away from other movements, Black Lives Matters and other movements that were strong in the streets and in communities and connecting people together. The pandemic disassembled that. And
Mm.
then we were forced by government leaders and policies that are put into place to have to go back physically into work when we already knew that we were already advocating for better infrastructure in buildings that have mold and poor access to air filtration. And so it may sound like a conspiracy theory, but it is important to not discount that, because history has shown us, and is not teaching us because we don't teach this history in public schools, but history has shown us that in this world, there is a history of these things happening. And so I want people to also consider that as well, and why we have to pivot ourselves in a way to really be safe, communicate effectively with our loved ones and, our neighbors and our constituents and our communities, and making sure that we are not forgetting the past and things that have happened, because this isn't far-fetched for America, for the powers that be of this world to create something like this, because they have, in all honesty, done it before.
Well, I think, from my perspective, I'm not even trying to, and not to, dismiss your concerns or theories or anything like that. But when we think about, again, and we talk about this often, the battles that we have in our communities, and particularly related to the pandemic, which I think is a good segue into the T. I want to first of all shout out Kulia and Adriana in the Twin Cities for doing the work around the Stable Home, Stable Schools program, because
Good.
housing security is a big thing in the pandemic. Like, we're seeing so many people with the inability to work and the inability to secure income, and that ultimately leads up to you can't feed your family, you can't house your family. And so, Jay, you want to talk about Black women and their struggles during the pandemic, especially with these rent moratoriums and mortgage moratoriums about to end. What does that look like for Black women who have struggled to secure housing for their families, or Black families, period, who have faced a history of discrimination and
That's good.
bias in housing, and now that's been exacerbated by this pandemic? So just to go back to what you were saying, I think this is an opportunity. It's a blessing and curse in this pandemic for Black people to rise up and really
That's
see this
good.
oppression that's been hitting us, and say this is an opportunity to advocate and not go back to normal, but set a new normal in which we are equal and we have equity, and we can be free in this country. So
I
I'm gonna
love
bring it
that.
back. I'm gonna rewind it
No,
to,
no, so that was a perfect segue to the T. So I think we are definitely ready for the T on this Friday.
Mhm.
All right. So shout out to the T. I love these graphics, man. I'm trying to get some graphics for, I might have to, that was a good segue. Thank you, our background workers, for making that happen. I got to connect on that. Our first article that we're going to talk about on the T is really what Tanisha has mentioned, the Black, I don't even want to say the Black, but the housing crisis here in America, of course. And this is the thing that gets me, sis. It really touches my heart, because there are so many atrocities happening across the world, happening in our nation. But every time I turn my head, it is, well, this is what's happening to people, and this is the atrocity. But Black women are disenfranchised the most, or they are most at risk, or Black boys are more at risk, or Black girls are most at risk, or Black men are most at risk. And I'm like, God, come on, God, we got to have a deep conversation about what is it like. This is something impacting all people across the nation, but for some reason it's impacting Black people more heavily. And so the article that you see in front of us, it says that Americans were told to stay home, but Black women are most at risk of losing theirs. And they're most at risk of losing their homes because they have to get out and drive the workforce. And I'm thinking about the two parents who have passed away here in Atlanta, and the parent liaison who passed away, and all our mothers, all who are working to support and attribute to their family income. Those who are out here, these are Black women who also, let me take this a step further, are serving our children and our families, and they're dying like right in falling out on school buses, falling out in schools, dying just like this, Black women. And so Tanisha, this is something that is really on my heart this morning, around where is the advocacy at? All last year and before, we saw protect Black women matter, all lives matter, Black lives matter. Well, where are the movements? Where's the awareness around the housing crisis and how it's impacting Black women. And so would love your thoughts on this as a Black woman, having fellow, activists that are bringing awareness to this. Shout out to Kulia and so many of our sisters in the struggle who are really bringing awareness to this. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this.
It's tough, Jay.
Yeah.
Like I'm a Black woman. I'm a homeowner, and income is not guaranteed. So I'm in that same bucket where I can be one day in a position where I got to figure out how I'm gonna pay my mortgage next month, or how I'm gonna eat tonight or tomorrow morning. When you ask the question around where's the advocacy, I'm really trying to have grace in this space because as we've talked about, we are going through so much as Black people. And it's really a time where again everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to take care of themselves, and they don't have the space or the energy to figure out how they're going to take care of their neighbors, or the mother of the church or somebody else. It's hard out here in these streets, and I'm not saying that that's an excuse for us dropping the ball on certain movements or supporting our brothers and sisters and our kids, but we have to really remember and recognize the fact that we are in a very difficult space where each of us individually are trying to survive. And even there are resources out there that people aren't aware of. And I know I personally worked with another organization here in Chicago to raise money for Black families that were facing eviction. And the hard part is too, I don't know what this thing is, but we raised about close to $5,000. And that's pretty good in a pandemic. And we couldn't give this money away. And so it brings me to the thought of I've seen some people just let their houses go because they're like, well, I'd rather rent than be a homeowner. I'd rather figure it out,
Wow.
or I'd rather leave this place. A lot of people leave in Chicago as of now. CPS is trying to track 100,000 students that are missing.
Yeah.
And we've had, and
Major.
the census said that only 85,000 Black people left Chicago between now and back to 2010. That's not true, because we're not filling out the census. And so there's so many
Yeah.
different factors that go into this conversation that we would need a whole day
Yeah,
to
you're
break them
right.
down, but just, going back to the fact that again, we all struggling, we are trying to figure it out for ourselves. So try to figure it out for the next person is just damn near impossible because we don't have the answers.
No,
So I
you're
just want
absolutely
to,
right.
yeah,
You're
that's
absolutely
what it
right.
is for
It's
me.
deep. It's so deep, especially with our guests who are coming on after we go to our last part of the tea are going to help us circle back to this whole thing because they're activists and community builders in their own rights, and are doing the work to really bring awareness to this. And it's a major thing. Public housing, public education, public transportation are definitely even more under attack. And so I don't take the conversation lightly. We definitely are all one step. I'm not working full time. I'm at my school doing my practicum because I'm full time in school. And so, yeah, this really hits home because I'm working, on several fronts to make sure that, the home is still standing. So, yeah, I completely get it. But I do think in a turn of subjects that being able to be strong in your identity and who you are is so massively important. And so last shout out to the T goes to Lil Nas X, and he is still kicking up dust. He is still giving people the blues. I mean, these brothers are having a fit about Lil Nas X. And so I commend him, having been a teacher in Douglas County when he was a student. And, I'm not even going to be like, oh, yeah, that's one of my former students. Now, I'm not even going to go that far. But there are some teachers that will be like, yeah, I taught him. But you were just a teacher at the school. So just say that he was one of the students there. That's why I'm like, don't flex. Like, don't, all that jazz. But I do really commend a lot of what he's doing. People say, well, oh, it's the system buying him out and blah, 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 blah. But here's the reality. His story resonates with me because I remember being a special education teacher. And of course, I was a cool teacher, right? So all of the kids felt like I have a space in Mr. Allen's class. And when he talks about, going to work at that Taco Bell and not being acknowledged and people, shunning you because of your sexuality, Yeah, I remember that. I remember how my students were being treated in high school. So his album has dropped, which is named after him, and it's a big thing around accepting your identity. And
Mm,
it's really real. And let me tell you why I'm so excited about it, because a lot of those experiences stem from him being a middle school and a high school student. And I will know the experiences of those students. And so, yeah, my students and I, we've talked about it. And so if you haven't checked out the Lil Nas X album that is out and all of the visual graphics, I don't know if you've seen them, sis, but they've been like released, and it
yeah,
has been interesting to see the comments and the conversations and how people can pull things back. This is one thing I love about this era, right? It's the fact checking. And so people that go back to the 90s and was like, y'all talking about him, with this baby bump, but y'all forgot when the Cosby Show did it and when they had a whole movie, with these top tier actors in it, men who were pregnant, right? And so now all of a sudden it's detrimental to our society. And I feel like it's only detrimental because Lil Nas X actually has embraced his sexuality.
hmm
So
hmm
that's why that's the issue. It's not the issue of the visuals. I wanted to just talk that up a little bit for the T in regards to his album that's dropping and the reality of how much more difficult it is to be someone who identifies with the LGBTQ community, well, plus community, and be black. And so, yeah.
Hey, I don't have a lot to say. I just want to shout out Lil Nas X for being troll of the year because he be trolling he be trolling baby everybody. All the church mothers, he be trolling the deacons, he be trolling the white supremacists, he be everybody, he trolls them all, honey, and he does it well. So I don't
Yeah,
have any
he
particular
does.
comment around the album or anything because I haven't listened to it. And my larger comment around identity, if it ain't got nothing to do with you, mind your business. And one of the things that really blew me kind of related to the Lil Nas X thing, but another story is Russell Westbrook in a skirt.
Yeah,
And people having a fit about that and talking about, well, it's not masculine, so it's about to spark this whole masculine versus feminine debate. And it's like, who told you that being masculine meant that you can only wear pants? History showed us something. Our ancestry shows us something different. If you look back at
yeah,
our brothers and sisters in Africa, so it's this socialized, this westernized view of what men are supposed to look like and what women are supposed to look like and what sexuality is supposed to look like, that has people trapped in these boxes and worried about everybody else's identity. Mind your
you're
damn
right.
business.
You're
Mind
right.
your
I
business
mean,
and drink water. Period.
I ain't saying that I may want to go out and put on a skirt. I want to put on something that's comfortable. But
Yeah.
let me tell you, I mean, for me, like I'm gonna be honest, like even the house robe, like they make men's house robes, but that's just like grandmama's, house dress that she put on around the house, and I don't feel like having to put nothing on, so let me just throw on this house dress. That's what a robe is. It's like the same thing, and I rock a nice little robe. I just it's
Maybe
my
maybe
robe.
people need a breeze. Maybe
Yeah,
they need
need
a
a
little
breeze.
breeze.
Yeah.
But that's just my overall comment. And it's
No, that's
just
good. That's
it's,
good.
it's just so everything is so provocative, and some things are meant to be. Lil Nas X is definitely provocative, and I shot him out for standing in his identity and his originality, and again being able to troll the kids so well. I get props.
Yeah,
That's all.
he
That's all I
does.
got.
He does it well. So we're ready to bring on our guest, and we're going to go right into our conversation around um, housing affordability and the eviction moratorium. Who's winning? Are more of us getting, put out of our homes? Are we flexible and actually being able to maintain and stay? And so we have some brothers on um, who are actually some game changers, fellow activists. This is family coming on, so I'm excited about our guests for today, and they're our experts um, on this conversation and much more. So welcome to TDRS, Jereme and Devin. And I'm gonna do a little Atlanta move right here, and I'm gonna allow you all to actually tell us about who you are and the work that you're doing. So Jereme, we'll kick it off with you, and then Devin, we'll hear from you, brother.
So first off, hey, my friends. I'm really happy, and I'm always feeling very comfortable around people that I know. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for hosting this. My name is Jereme. My last name is Sharpe. That's Sharpe. I'm running for Atlanta City Council, post one at large. So if you know Atlanta, Atlanta has 12 districts. when you see or hear the term at large, that does mean citywide. So I look forward to representing all 12 districts in the city of Atlanta. I'm from Miami, Florida. Been in Atlanta probably for about 10 years. Was in New York City for a little while also. That's about it. I mean, I won't go on and on about me. I'd rather talk about the topic for today. So yeah, Jereme Sharpe. Thank you.
Thank you all for the opportunity to be with you today and to be on this platform. I'm a little fangirling out because I watched the videos and I'm like, I finally made it to the show. So thank you. But my name is Devin Barrington Ward. I'm a longtime community organizer here in the city of Atlanta that's been working on issues pertaining to homelessness, criminal justice reform, HIV prevention and treatment, and of course, housing affordability, because housing impacts all of those things. I'm also a candidate for Atlanta City Council, but I am not running against my brother Jereme Sharpe. I am running for a local district council seat in Council District 9, which is anchored by the Bankhead community on the northwest side of Atlanta. And so I'll leave it there so that we can get into the discussion.
That's super dope.
Jay, can I just, I'm putting it in the chat right now, but I gotta applaud y'all. Y'all running for these offices. We talk about how we need black male educators. We absolutely do, but we need black men in these political seats, in these leadership seats. So I just want to shout y'all out for that. That just did something to my heart today. Amen.
Yeah, no, that's totally. And brothers who have been on the ground doing the work. And so Devin and I work together with the People's Uprising, and we've had Councilman Brown and Chivy and a couple of Chris Brown and a couple of the leaders who have been on. And so consistently doing this work in communities and really lifting conversations. And y'all, here's the reality: from Chicago to Atlanta to DC to Fresno, California, our people are suffering. And especially when we look at public education and the sector to public housing, and even connecting it to public transportation, there's a major thing happening around that. And so I want to go to our first question of thought for today, which is around this. What's actually being done to support those most vulnerable of evictions? And we just showed in our the clip of an article around Black women who are most at risk. And so what are some things that are being done to protect everyone being impacted by this, but especially Black women?
Jereme, you want to take it first?
I'll let you go first. On this.
Okay, because I figured like Jereme is the public administration expert. So I was going to let him list off all the programs, and I was going to tell you what's not being done. But I will hop in first. So what are some of the things that are being done? We do know that there is tenant relief money that is being allocated at the state, county, and local level. However, we also know that there's lots of red tape to get that money, and that a lot of that money has not been spent. So the Biden administration, to their credit, did do what they were supposed to do. They did fight for the eviction moratorium. They did put money in the federal budget to give to state and local governments to give to communities and people who are in need of rental assistance so that they can stay in their homes. But there's been a complete failure at the local level to get that money to people in a timely fashion. And so that is where the concern that I have as a community organizer is that why is there so much red tape for people to get the money that they need? There wasn't this much. I know there's, on the blogs and things, people are talking about, it was real easy to get the PPP money. But when it comes to the rental assistance money, it's like pulling teeth. Why is that? And we know why that is, because we know that the majority of the people who need the rental assistance money are actually Black and brown people. How community is showing up is there are some community funds. One place that I would direct people to is the Housing Justice League. They have a hotline number. I will make sure that I get that number to you all before we exit this call. But they have a hotline number that people can call around, and that they serve as kind of a clearinghouse where they can direct people to different housing resources and provide assistance in terms of how to stay in their home, in terms of the process around eviction court, which here in Georgia, prior to the pandemic, we were already in an eviction crisis. The Atlanta Federal Reserve listed Atlanta as one of the top cities with the highest eviction rates in the country. And many of those zip codes are actually home to my council district 9, 30318 and 30331, has some of the highest eviction rates in the state and in the region. And so there's not enough being done. Unfortunately, I wish I could say, oh, here are all of the resources that are available to people, but there's just not enough resources being done. And there's money on the table. The majority of the money that Georgia has received for rental assistance hasn't been spent.
Wow. And I'm just going to say that's everything that Devin said is spot on. Like, there's nothing else more to it. That is exactly what it is. Biden administration did what they were supposed to. Money came down to the states. States gave the money to the local governments. And right now, that's where the bottleneck is. How are we actually getting the money out to the people that need it the most? And when I'm out there, just like Devin is, and we're helping people, my friend at Publix, my friend at Kroger, actually two of them, and helping these cashiers, these workers to get assistance. And one of the issues is, and you'll hear me talk about it a lot, just they don't even know the resources really exist, or they don't know how to get to the resources. And a lot of the resources are out of their hands. We focus so much on technology these days because we think everybody has access to the internet. And the reality is that everybody does not have access to the internet, and especially in our city of Atlanta. So they'll have these workshops here and there where if you don't have access to the internet, you're supposed to go line up at the workshop, but many people don't even end up hearing about the workshop. So it really does come down to the local governments and the agencies that we're relying on as a city to distribute this money. And are they doing it? Not only are they doing it quickly, but as Devin said, what about the red tape? How many pieces of paperwork, how many signatures do we really need before you release the money that is on the table? We haven't even reached 50% of the funds to be spent yet. Not even 50%. That is unbelievable. So literally everything that Devin said is spot on. There's not a problem. The resources are right here. There's this bottleneck with our local agencies really getting out the money to people that need it. That's it. And cutting that red tape.
Can I jump in real quick, y'all?
Yeah,
I'm sitting here looking like I got gas because it's, I'm looking gassy because it's a lot of stuff bubbling up in me, right? And I think that I'm considering myself these days a junior historian, right? And when we talk about the red tape and the resources and all that stuff, in my mind, I just keep having this thought, but how do we get here in the first place? Because this hasn't just been a pandemic problem; it's been an American problem since we've been here. Yes. And so when you think about the history in which they never want, because I'm frustrated with the fact that first of all, we got so many Black families that have to rent homes. That means that they don't have the opportunity for them to own anything is limited. Number one. But we go back and we think about how they burned down our cities, our Black communities where we were thriving because they didn't want us to have businesses, they didn't want us to have homes. And if we would have gotten the reparations that people are fighting for to rebuild our communities, because if you think about these cities as hubs, how many Black people came from Tulsa? Even Neo came from Tulsa and moved to Chicago for a little bit. And so had that wealth been sustained and white people weren't hating on Black people having something, there wouldn't be so many renters. We would have that wealth that followed our families through generations, and we would have been able to build to the point where we wouldn't even be in this situation. So that's something that I'm thinking about. But yeah, this red tape that we're talking about is longstanding discrimination and racism. And it's been, again, exacerbated in the pandemic. And we're not talking about displacement. We're not talking about gentrification, how that has an effect on all of this. And ultimately, the question is, when you push all these Black people out, you're shuffling us to different cities. We from Chicago, we're running to Houston, we're running to Atlanta, but when we can't run to these places anymore, where are we gonna go?
That's good. Where do we go? That's
good. I think the other piece about it that is equally frustrating and disappointing is that now, it is not just a Black and white issue. Much of the funds have been given to jurisdictions that are run by Black elected officials. Fulton County has 4 Black elected officials that sit on the Fulton County Commission. There are numerous Black elected officials that sit on the Atlanta City Council. Of course, we have a Black mayor. DeKalb County, the same. Clayton County, the same. Even Gwinnett County has shifted over in terms of its political dynamics. But what is disappointing is that a lot of this is boiled down to we don't trust that if we give the money to Black people that they're going to spend it on what they need to spend it on, which is ridiculous because we don't have these same requirements for corporate developers when we're giving out hundreds of millions of dollars in tax incentives. We just gave $1 million to a developer in Midtown to build a condo, to build a tower. I'm not sure if it's a condo. Jereme, you may know a little bit more about that building, but it is a high rise. When we have plenty of high rises and Atlanta is a hot real estate market, we don't need to be giving away tax dollars to incentivize developers to build in our city. They know that they're going to make money here, hence why they're coming. And so the idea that we need to sweeten the deal with tax dollars, that somebody's got to pay for that. And oftentimes that's being paid for through the lack of services, through the lack of assistance that's being given to people in community. Atlanta loves to incentivize and throw money at nice, pretty, shiny things, but we do not throw money in our communities. And as a side note, we also don't throw money on our streets.
And Devin, just
potholes and everything else. We got nice, shiny buildings in Atlanta and messed up streets. I've never understood that.
No, that's a good point. Brother Jereme, let me make this public service announcement right quick. I don't do anything that I don't ask my students to do. So I've already done this. I've already liked and shared this conversation out with as many people as possible. And so we're going to have a couple of reminders throughout the conversation for people to do this. But if you're tuning in, you haven't liked this and shared this out, please make sure you do so. All right, Brother Jereme, it's back on you.
I was saying, even Devin, what I want to say to that is even more, as we're giving out these tax incentives, what we should very much be doing is ensuring that each and every one of these developments have community benefits agreements, right?
Absolutely.
So that if we are saying, okay, we're gonna give you this money or give you a tax break, okay, how does that money still come back into the community? We got to get it back into the community one way or another. And I think that that's what we really have to focus on more. I'm not too sure if or when the tax breaks will stop. In my opinion, I think that we need to be focused on giving away tax breaks in certain particular areas, not the Beltline, that's for sure, but in areas where we actually need to be building. But regardless of giving out the tax break, what we always need to be sure of is that we have those community benefits agreements so that the community and the neighborhood is benefiting from whatever development is coming. If you want to do a new high rise, okay, cool. That means new sidewalks. We need a new school. You need to put over a certain fund over a certain amount of years for the community so that there isn't any displacement. So we just have to make it work for us. And that's something we haven't been doing enough of. We've been giving out the tax incentives, but not ensuring that there's the community benefits agreements. And then on top of that, we're not ensuring that these community benefits agreements have teeth. What if they don't follow through? What type of penalties are we giving these developers so that, again, the community is still benefiting one way or another? So that's something we talked about before, just making sure that those
robust community benefits agreements. You know, Microsoft is coming to my district right off of Bankhead at the Quarry Yards. And, you know, I am not anti-Microsoft. I'm not anti-development. But what I am clear is that corporations need to be good neighbors too, just like people who live in community, right? And if you're taking up space, right, with your development, what does that mean for the people who have been here before that made the community attractive enough for you to want to build here, right? Good. And so, like, if Microsoft isn't, for example, agreeing to train, 3,000 kids from District 9 so that they can eventually work jobs at the Microsoft corporate headquarters, then I'm not interested. If they're not willing to help incubate a grocery store, because we got Microsoft coming to Bankhead and there is no grocery store in Bankhead, which is
grocery store,
right?
Or bank that's actually near.
Or bank, no grocery store, no bank, no pharmacy. I mean, we're talking about basic things.
There's no brunch spot. I was looking for one the other day.
It's ridiculous.
We can go on and on, right?
We can go on and on and on, but Microsoft is coming. So Microsoft, if you're going to be here, you need to recognize that these are services and things that need to come in the community. And people will say, well, that's not Microsoft's responsibility. Microsoft has a privilege of being a multi-billion-dollar entity. You are not going to come to a community that has some of the highest poverty rates in the country and then expect that you don't have to come here and provide assistance in terms of how you help build community. You can't just come here and take the community for ransom. But in addition to that, it's also about making sure how many affordable housing units are you going to build? Because we know the moment that Microsoft cuts the ribbon, the moment that Microsoft break ground, rent's going to go up.
Yep.
Housing costs go up.
Go ahead, sis.
I just want to add on that point really quickly, because here in Chicago, and I saw this comment from Geneva, but when we're talking about corporations, I know particularly on the south side of Chicago in one year, we saw 2 Targets leave. We saw in my old neighborhood of Inglewood, we saw the Bank of America close, we saw the Walgreens close, and we also saw a Save-A-Lot close, which is a grocery store. And so we think about, when we're talking about these tax incentives, which in Chicago, we call them TIFs, it's called tax incremental financing. And you give them to these businesses to come into these low income or undesirable communities and build, and they get those monies, and then they ultimately leave and go somewhere else that they consider more thriving or more affluent. That leaves a community blighted and without resources. And so I think that's something else that we need to talk about too in the community benefits agreement, because how do the communities look when these companies decide to go elsewhere and these people are left without resources?
Well, also too, to the points that have been made, and it leads us to our next question around, we're hearing all of the tax, write-offs, all of the benefits that corporations and businesses are getting, but what about the renters? And so the question is framed around, especially in Atlanta, there have been renters who have been on the news that have been speaking about unbearable living conditions from a lot of these corporate entities that are private, that are buying homes in our communities. And Black women are victims of living in such horrible living conditions. What rights do renters have? What are the rights that renters actually get? What are their benefits from all of this, coming from the conversation, hearing about the tax relief and benefits and incentives of the corporations? What incentives are there for renters, and what rights do they have?
Jereme, you want to go first? You want me to?
I mean, I'll jump in. I'll be quick. There aren't any rights really. Right. I mean, just in the state of Georgia, especially, right? Like, I spent a lot of time in New York City, and it's a renter's paradise, rights on top of rights. Like, it's all about protecting renters. But in the state of Georgia, landowners, it's the property owners that have all the rights. The renters just don't have that right. So I think what it looks like, if anything, one solution upon many is ensuring that our renters have just the legal support from a city side of things, so that when they are going to court, we found out, I mean, many of us already knew this, 96% of the time, renters are going to eviction court without having legal representation. So I think from a city perspective, that's one angle we can certainly have, ensuring that our citizens, our residents, have that legal protection when they are going to court. And that's just one way, but down to what rights do we have? Unfortunately, we're still fighting for them in the state of Georgia. Wow. And we can only put forth so many laws or ordinances throughout the city without them actually going anywhere or sticking.
Yeah, I want to read this tweet that came out last month that I just thought was heartbreaking. It's from Stephanie Stokes. She's a reporter with, I believe, NPR Atlanta. And she says in the tweet, in Fulton County eviction court today, tenant says he was approved for rental assistance, but payment has not been received as of yet. Judge won't reset the case, gives him 10 minutes to check with his caseworker, who says payment will take 7 to 14 days. Landlord asks for eviction, judge approves. Now, this was in the very short time frame where the eviction moratorium lapsed. That's heartbreaking. That tenant did what they were supposed to do. They applied for the funds. They checked in with their case manager. They had been in constant communication. They've been giving updates to the landlord. And the fact that the judge did not force this to go to arbitration and did not require that this landlord be patient to receive their funds, I think it's just wrong, because what we also recognize in that is now we have a family that's displaced. Now the court system is contributing to the issues of homelessness in the city, right? And so tenants don't have rights here in Atlanta. Recently, the Georgia legislature did pass some legislation that allows for people to break their lease if they are involved in a domestic violence situation without penalty. And while I praise that decision, because we know that domestic violence has been on the rise, particularly during the pandemic, you shouldn't have to get beat up by a lover in order to have some sort of rights and protection under Georgia tenant law, right?
Wow, and that's a good point that you highlighted. You know, Devin, there is a lot of domestic abuse is happening in our homes as well because people are overwhelmed, they're frustrated. You know, when you think about people, the loss of eviction too, like you're not just being displaced from your home, but then it's all the penalties, fees. You have to try to find somewhere else to stay. That
Absolutely.
takes
And an
additional
eviction
money.
stays on your record for 7 years.
Yes.
And one of the things they don't tell you is that you don't even have to have been officially put out. Just a filing in eviction court stays in your public record, which is attached to your credit report for up to 7 years. So one of the things that I hope to be able to partner with Jereme on when we're on council is a couple of things. One, I think the city of Atlanta needs an office of the tenant advocate so that people can go to eviction court if it requires it to go there with some sort of representation that is backed by the city. Housing experts, housing lawyers, case managers that are working to make sure that one, they have that tenants are able to present a case so that it is not lopsided and towards the benefit of just the landlord, right?
Wow.
There's also a place where I believe that arbitration could be happening at the city level before a filing even happens in court. So that way we have professionals that are working with folks to work out agreements between landlords and tenants so that we prevent people from going to eviction court, because again, you don't even have to be put out in order for the eviction to show up on your record, which impacts your ability to secure housing whenever you decide to leave your current place of residence, right?
Yeah.
So we want to prevent people from even having that filing in eviction court in the first place. The other piece is that we don't do enough around making sure that landlords are adhering to code enforcement. You should not be able to put someone out and you have violated every code enforcement rule known to the city of Atlanta. That's ridiculous. So we have people, as I've been canvassing District 9, I've been talking to folks who are a part of Section 8 programs, and they don't have AC. They don't have a stove that works. And the city is continuing to reward these landlords with contracts to be able to be a part of the Section 8 program. That's ridiculous.
That's unacceptable.
The last piece that I would like to highlight on the need for more tenant protections that originate at the city level is that we did pass legislation that require that we no longer do tenant discrimination, right? So in the sense of a source of income discrimination, where landlords can say, oh, I'm not renting to Section 8. That is discrimination because we know that it is tied to some very outdated misnomers about those who are receiving public assistance for rent, right? And it's usually connected to some racist beliefs, right? And so while we did pass that, there has not been significant enforcement of that. Regularly, I still see rental listings that say, we're not, no Section 8 allowed, right? That is wrong. The last piece is we need to be rewarding landlords that do right by the people, right? So landlords that are committed to affordable housing, under my plan, I plan to make sure that we actually incentivize those landlords to keep their units affordable by giving them free renovation money from the city of Atlanta where they can renovate their property. But the agreement is if you take this renovation money to renovate your unit or to renovate your single family home, that first, it needs to be a unit that is affordable to low or middle income tenants. And second, you cannot raise rent on those people for 3 to 4 years if you take this money, right? Because we know that renovation is not cheap, particularly right now where construction costs have gone up. And so it's a win-win where tenants get a newly renovated unit, landlords get to be able to renovate their units or their housing without having to come out of pocket, and the city benefits because we keep more affordable housing units online.
No, listen, I just made a comment in the the comment section basically saying that if you've never had a black male social studies teacher, this is a snippet of what it looks like, because you guys are dropping so much valuable information that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and is not reaching the masses of people. And so I really appreciate the information. I'm learning, I'm taking notes.
Like Joe Clark. We got Joe Clark on the line.
Yeah, we got Joe Clark in the background too. He's on my wall.
Yes, everybody's on your wall. Hopefully one day I'll make it up there.
Well, listen, we're the next generation of leaders. We'll be up there well after, you know, we're gone. So listen, I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, and I definitely want to ask this question. And Tanisha, definitely, you know, let us know about what's happening in Chicago and other spaces that you're connected with. But what is next for public housing in predominantly Black communities? And this question is so important because it touches to Tanisha's point earlier, that people have been leaving Chicago, they've been leaving New Orleans, they've been leaving Detroit and other places. But where are Black people going, and where are we recreating a sense of community where we do have the hope of one day having ownership? So what is next for public housing in predominantly Black communities and for the Black American?
I think what's unique about Atlanta, and I say this a lot, is that we have a lot of land here in our cities throughout our neighborhoods. So what I think is next is what's called social housing, and it's very much a European term, but what it looks like, it's basically city-owned housing that is land that is the city is building on, and if they're having it professionally managed. And what's unique about it is that the units are reserved for all income classes, reserved for those that are legacy residents in the neighborhood. Some are reserved for those that are elderly. Some are reserved for first-time renters. So you have this really unique mix of people in the building. And then some of the units are also market rate. So what I see we're going to be doing in the city of Atlanta is very specifically social housing. Right now, we may not be able to rely on private developers to come in and provide actual renters at the discount, or not discount, just at the deeply affordable rates that we really need them at. Developers may not be able to do that anymore. The numbers may not be able to pencil out. But what I know in the city of Atlanta is that, again, we have plenty of land to be able to build on. We're in a really good standing with our finances also. So we can build the social housing to ensure that everyone that's currently the legacy residents that are in their neighborhood, they can stay. And this social housing, it's not just rentals, it's also sales as well, because we do want to create homeowners in our neighborhoods. That's what we ultimately want to do. So what I look forward to is social housing in our city, but I think that that's one of the maybe dozen of different housing tools that we'll be able to use.
Okay, if I can ask a follow-up question with that, Jereme, I really want to know, because I haven't heard of that before. And so what's the incentive for city leadership, specifically, again, political leaders and developers, to buy into that concept for really people, families that they've been trying to push out? What's the incentive for them? Or how can, if there is no incentive, how can those families advocate for that framework?
So I think it's not necessarily incentives. It's just the city doing it. I think it's having the right people on council to say, hey, this is what we need to do. And it's as simple as that. In this particular case, we're not even bringing in developers. This is the city saying, hey, this is what we want to do, putting out an RFP. If you want to be a developer and come build, so be it. But there's thousands that are out there that are going to want to do the job. So I think, to your point, it's just having the right people on council that are saying, this is what social housing is. We have the land to do it, and we're going to do it. What I'm noticing is that sometimes people that haven't just seen a lot, but just the idea itself is they can't necessarily fathom it. But I think once you know, and I think Larry, who's running for District 4, he says it best. He said, what we don't know, we don't know. And I think that once we know something, we know about social housing, city council members know about it, then we do it. And I'm happy to say that this time around, we will have a city council that knows about these things and has the willingness to get it done.
I love that. I love that. Brother Devin, I want to ask your thoughts to that too, but in a different manner, because public housing, and I saw Tanisha's comment in the comment section that public housing is non-existent. And there is a strong connection to public transportation and public education. And so to end out that last point that Brother Jereme was making, what collaboration needs to be held between our entities within inner cities or in cities, period, that are driving housing, affordability, public transportation, and public education for our communities?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I want to start off by saying one of the things that's a part of my platform is to create a city-funded housing voucher that can actually be used as a rent-to-own voucher, right? We shouldn't just be having people in a perpetual state of renting. We should be creating vouchers that allow people to actualize themselves and build wealth. And so if it's income that can be used to rent a unit for 20 years, why is it not income that could be used to help someone become an owner of that unit eventually, right? And so I would like to see a city-funded housing voucher to help reduce the 15,000 person waiting list that we have right now for affordable housing in the city of Atlanta, but also create pathways for families and individuals to eventually use that voucher and leverage it to be able to become homeowners. I think the other thing is that we've got to ask ourselves two questions. Housing affordability is an issue of two things. One, either housing is too expensive because the wages are not matching the weight of housing. So we oftentimes talk about housing affordability, and it is not in tandem with a conversation about how we need to increase wages for people living in these cities, right? Because you got to have it either one of the way. It can't be, it's got to be either or. Either you got to increase people's pay so that way they can afford what is currently on the rental market, or you've got to create housing that is reflective of people's pay right now while we still work to increase people's wages. Unfortunately, at the city level, we cannot do a city level minimum wage for private companies. But what we can do is make sure that we are setting the example. I know right now, I don't believe anybody who's a city staff person is less than $15 an hour. That's great, but we need to do more than that. We should be upping pay to at least $18 an hour. It's why we have major vacancies in departments like the Department of Public Works that's responsible for repaving roads, filling potholes, and picking up the trash. But in addition to that, I think we also need to be clear about, Dr. King talked about, we love to quote Dr. King in this city. We love to talk about how he is the son of Atlanta. We love to talk about how this is the cradle of the civil rights movement. But Dr. King was very clear about budgets, government budgets reflecting a commitment to justice, right? Reverend Barber talks about this in the Poor People's Campaign a lot as well. And so my job on city council is to make sure that all of the city funds that we have can be directed towards the eradication of poverty. And so the way that we do that is when the city is spending millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on large infrastructure projects, like building parks, like repaving roads, like building transit projects like the Beltline. I am not supporting any allocations for those projects unless I am clear that there's going to be a majority of people from communities that are impoverished that are hired for those jobs, or that businesses that are contracting with the city are hiring people from the community to work those jobs and are paying them a livable wage. If you're not going to do that, then you're not going to have my vote on council. We have lots of money that is about to come down to Atlanta for infrastructure projects around transportation. We've got the renewal of our local sales tax for transportation. We've got the potential funds that are going to be coming to Atlanta from the federal infrastructure package. We're talking about billions of dollars that will be able to be used to improve sewage, because right now we have lots of flooding issues in Atlanta. Environmental racism is a definite issue for Black people in this city. We have lots of money that's going to be coming to widen and repave roads, to build more sidewalks, to build parks, and all of those, to transit projects, light rail and all of those things. That's great. But if those projects don't result in an increase in wealth and net worth for Black families, then they're a failure, in my mind. How are we spending $1 billion on a transit system, but then the average income for a Black family in this city is still only $33,000 a year? No, we need to make sure that those families have an option to be able to share in the wealth that is generated, because that is in the vision of Maynard Jackson. Someone else we love to quote in this city, but we take out of context all the time. And when we look at our budgets and when we look at the decisions that are made, they don't align with these visionaries like Dr. King and Maynard Jackson and others who talked about how we use public money for the public good.
Public service announcement. I wanted to just shout out the Bright Beam Network to Brother Devin's point. So we do this till we free us. Amazing book, right? And part 3 talks about the state can't give us transformative justice. Powerful chapter that speaks to what we've been talking about on today. And in the spirit of, Maynard Jackson and MLK, as we get ready to close out, they believed in doing the true work of transformative justice that definitely elevated the people. And our last question is centered around how do we get voters to invest more in the issues that Devin was just speaking to around housing, transportation, and even education, as our school districts are amongst the largest landholders in our cities. And how are we managing those dollars and also those properties, And so as we get ready to close out, we'll go to everyone's last words, but definitely thinking around how can we get more voters to really invest their votes on brothers such as all 3 of us who are running for office here in the city of Atlanta. And I would definitely say this, that Maynard Jackson was supported by the people. And that's what allowed him to really bring in change to the city of Atlanta. And so many of our politicians now are being bought by the major corporations that have these incentives and tax breaks and et cetera, and so forth. So as we get ready to close out in the last 2 minutes, brothers, we'll hear from you 2 first, and then Tanisha and I on our closing thoughts for the show.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up with, I think that it's really important that we actually meet people where they are. That's why my campaign is a grassroots driven campaign. We're knocking on doors and meeting people in their communities, because I want them to know and hold me accountable to the promises that I made at their doors. But one of the main promises that I made is that this won't be the last time you see me at your door. I will still be canvassing as a council member, because I think that it's ridiculous that we don't have elected officials in government agencies that are actually going into the neighborhoods and knocking on doors and saying, do you need rental assistance? That is good government, right? Government that comes and meets the people where it's at, and not expecting for people to always come to them, because we know that our people are living multifaceted lives and have many responsibilities. You brought up Black women. Black women are holding it down in so many different ways in our communities, from raising our children to teaching our children to being the primary breadwinners in our communities. And so the idea that we're expecting for Black women to come, or other people who are burdened with all of these responsibilities, to come to City Hall and to say we need assistance. No, it needs to be the other way around. City Hall needs to go to community and say we are here to help. And so I think the more that we see community organizers, because I am an activist, but I'm a community organizer till the day I die. And so the more that we see community organizers in community knocking on doors and making these policies real for people, meeting people where they're at, finding out what their concerns are, I think that you will see more of a collective buy-in of people willing to engage in the political process at their local level, because a lot of people don't have a lot of faith in the federal government anymore since the Trump administration. It's just been ridiculous up there. It's been a bad reality TV show. City government is where the rubber meets the road. And so we've got to instill trust. And the only way to do that is to have more community organizers in local government, like myself, Jereme, and so many others who are running for city council and other offices this election cycle. So thank you for the opportunity to talk with you all today. Love to talk with other activists and community organizers. And we got to just keep amplifying these conversations. If you're in Atlanta, early vote starts October 12th. Election day is November 2nd, and you must be registered by October 4th. Please check out my website, wakeupatl.org. That is wakeupatl.org. And connect with me on all social media platforms at Devin4Atlanta, either the number 4 or FOR Atlanta on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.
Hey, so yeah, thank you for doing this. Thank you for having us. I say that big part of getting votes or just educating is just doing this. What I would like to tell people, or what I want people to know, is just what city council does. City council is in charge of the roads and better transportation and bringing affordable housing to our city, and getting grocery stores into our communities and getting our sidewalks done. City council is what really is running our everyday lives. And I think that if many people really understood just that point alone, that again, when you have an emergency, your first call should be to 911, but your second call should be to your city councilor about whatever it is. You hit a pothole, a tree fell down in your backyard. We have to really let people know exactly that city council is what really is running the show every single day. And I think that it's these type of platforms, these conversations that we're having, where people now know, oh, okay, a tree falls in my backyard, that's city council. We're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about living wages, and come to find out, oh, city council actually has a lot of control over that. So I think a big part of it will just be educating people that your city council has the power to really transform your life. And that's why voting on a local level is so important. So again, thank you for having me. My name is Jereme. My last name is Sharpe. As Devin said earlier, we are not running against each other. I fully support my bro, Devin. He's running for district number 9. I'm running for an at-large position. Again, when you hear the term or see the term at-large, it does mean citywide. So it doesn't matter what district you're in. You will see my name on that ballot, and I do look forward to representing you. So thank you again.
Super dope, man. I am wishing both of you all the best. There's a light of excitement. A lot of neighbors are nervous about the races in the city, and it's a little more challenging for me because a lot of people are not and have not been invested in our education system in Atlanta for a while. And so really bringing awareness and the role that the school board plays in the equity issue here in the city of Atlanta. So check out the Allen for School Board page on Facebook to see what we have coming up next. And it was an honor having you brothers on. Like I mentioned, it was like a snippet of being in a history class with some Black male teachers that are dropping knowledge on social studies and history. So I really appreciate it. And shout out to Tanisha for the HGTV plug. HGTV meets TDRS. I love that.
I just want to shout out my favorite social studies teacher, Miss Rachel Doster. She's on Facebook a lot. She was my favorite teacher in high school, along with Dr. Martin, who was my debate coach. But she was a Black woman who made it a point to teach off the curriculum about history and Black history and world history. And I appreciate her for that so much because it created the man that you see here today, who's running for city council. So shout out to Black teachers and shout out to Black women always.
And shout out to y'all, Black brothers, Black men, for, you know, taking the lead and doing the right thing, you know, for our communities and for yourselves, and, you know, just representing us well. So I think that's it for today. We want to thank our viewers for always tuning in to TDRS, supporting us, contributing to the conversation. We love y'all so much. With that, y'all have a dope Friday. Have a great weekend. We will check y'all out next week. So go out and get into good trouble.
All right. Peace and love, y'all. Like and share this conversation.